Welcome to Decode It, a podcast series helping understand more about computer technologies and its beginnings. I'm Ashley Griffin, involved in IT from the 1980s, first with the Atari ST, then onto computer networks in the early 1990s. This episode is about the ATX size format. It's been a very difficult episode to do as I wanted to keep it simple, although there's so much information to go through. ATX, Advanced Technology Extended, is generally related to the motherboard and power supply physical size. It was patented by David Dent in 1995 at Intel and was based on the older AT size motherboards. Generally, ATX is heard to relate to the power supply size format, however it actually relates to both the dimensions of the motherboard and the power supply carrier inside the PC case. The goal was to standardize the component size and fixings, allowing manufacturers to create computer cases to a standard. Some cases had their own bespoke size power supplies, but still allowed an ATX size motherboard to be fitted. The ATX standard controls the power supply, rear hole size and fixing methods, as well as the motherboard size and its fixing screw locations. It also controlled the power supply connector design to the motherboard, as well as the input-output port hole size and location on the rear of the computer case. ATX motherboards are slightly smaller than the original AT design, therefore most cases will not carry the older AT motherboards. ATX is a standard and covers many other size motherboards including Micro ATX, Flex ATX, Nano ITX and Mini ITX, all being able to fit into an ATX case. As of February 2022, ATX standard is now at revision 3 and is still in use today. eATX was around the same time and is a much larger version to carry dual CPUs, as was 13 by 12 inches in size compared to the ATX, which was 9.6 by 9.6 inches. eATX cases generally would carry an ATX motherboard as the screw fixing locations are in the same positions. eATX power supplies generally were a lot larger, being they had to power 2 CPUs, thus could be used with a normal ATX motherboard by only using one of the CPU power connectors. Video graphics cards that would require power generally could use the second unused CPU power connector of the eATX power supply when used with a small 4 to 6 or 8 pin video graphics card adapter cable. 2004 Intel introduced BTX, Balanced Technology Extended format. It was mostly the motherboard reversed in the case and was short-lived, with Intel discontinuing development in 2006. The rear hole used for the input-output connectors was a standard size and location. The actual position of those connectors depended on the manufacturer, and thus required the use of the manufacturer's specific cover plate that fitted into the ATX case. I'd built many PCs over the years and seen small changes with the ATX components, such as the power supply had a 100mm fan inside pushing air over the components then out the rear. The same fan was then moved to the outside of the case pulling air over the components. Then was changed to a larger 120mm fan inside downwards, thus pulling air out directly away from the motherboard out the back of the case. Some power supply manufacturers tried to push the depth limit with a larger 1 kilowatt outputs, however normally resulted in the top bay of the case being unusable as the power supply was so long, restricting access to be able to cable the top bay. Motherboard power connectors were generally at the top of the motherboard, as this was the location of the power supply. A few manufacturers moved the power supply to the base of the case, creating issues with the power cable length not being long enough to reach the top of the motherboard. Today most PCs are tiny and manufacturers have mostly abandoned the use of the ATX size standard. Gone are the days where you could swap any power suppliers, now they are bespoke made parts for that computer case and the motherboard power connector. As the case, motherboard and power supply are all bespoke design parts, almost all PCs purchased today do not adhere to the ATX standard unless it's a self-built PC. ATX was mostly a consumer PC part sizing. Servers were always bespoke designs, although some crossovers happen, such as the Flex 1U power supplies in the smaller 1U server cases. Thank you for spending some time with me. Subscribe to see more in the Decode It series.